You know, when something truly weird drops out of the deep dark sky, what's our first reaction? It's not usually to pull out a calculator and do the math. Nope, our first instinct is to tell a story about it. And that idea right there, that's the perfect launch pad for our explainer on the interstellar visitor, 3I/Atlas. This thing didn't just test our science, it really poked at our imagination and that deep-seated need we all have to make sense of cosmic mysteries with a good story. So, what's the deal with this thing? Well, its official, kind of boring name is 3I/Atlas. And get this, it's only the third interstellar object we've ever spotted. But the internet, of course, gave it a way cooler name, Three-Eyed Atlas. And no, it didn't literally have three eyes. The name comes from three really, really weird puzzles it gave scientists to solve. Okay, so let's break down these three eyes. First step, its path. As it flew through our solar system, it was accelerating just a tiny bit, but in a way that the sun's gravity just couldn't account for. Second, its chemistry was bizarre. It was venting a lot of carbon dioxide and nickel, but the iron that usually comes along with nickel, strangely missing. And third, its origin. This thing was a tourist, a visitor from another star system. And after all the arguments about Oumuamua, that fact alone put everyone on high alert. So, you've got these three huge mysteries just sitting there on the table. It really didn't take long for the most exciting, the most dramatic theory to light up the internet. And yeah, you guessed it, what if it wasn't a rock at all? This chart really lays it all out, doesn't it? A normal, dead rock follows a clean, predictable path. You can calculate it perfectly with gravity. But 3I/Atlas? It just didn't. A typical comet has a chemical profile we recognize. 3I/Atlas had this weird, nickel-rich but iron-poor signature. And of course, it wasn't one of ours. It was from out there. When you line it all up like this, the simple, oh, it's just a comet, explanation starts to feel, well, a little weak. And this one line, man, it just perfectly captures the whole vibe that was taking over. That tiny extra push, that non-gravitational acceleration, that's not something a dead piece of rock is supposed to do. But you know what does that? An engine. It's a simple, powerful, and honestly an incredibly cool idea. And you gotta remember, this wasn't happening in a vacuum. The public and even parts of the scientific community were already totally primed by Oumuamua to think about alien probes. Headlines were screaming about a Manhattan-sized object accelerating. Some pretty prominent scientists were even suggesting it could be artificial. It was just the perfect storm for the alien theory to really take off. But hold on. What if nature is way more clever than we give it credit for? What if a rock can act like that, if it's not just a simple, boring rock? A new scientific model came out with this absolutely beautiful and elegant solution, one that needs zero aliens, just some really, really cool chemistry. Okay, so the core of this whole idea is something called a metastable phase. Now that sounds super complicated, but I promise it's not. The best way to get it is to think about those little reusable hand warmers, you know? You've got this liquid inside that's totally happy and stable until you click that little metal disc. And that tiny nudge, that click, makes the whole thing crystallize and bam, it releases a wave of heat. See? The energy was locked up inside the whole time, just waiting for a little trigger. So let's apply that hand warmer idea to 3I/Atlas. As it got closer to our sun, the gentle warmth acted like that click. It nudged these little pockets of a special, energy-rich meta-ice inside the comet. This caused them to flip their state, releasing a burst of heat and gas. And what kind of gas? Specifically, gas rich in CO2 and nickel compounds. As that gas shot out through cracks in the surface, it acted like a tiny, all-natural rocket engine, giving the comet that extra little push. What this all means is that no laws of physics were ever broken. Our first attempt at the accounting was just incomplete. It's like we were only looking at one ledger, the orbital energy ledger, the energy of its motion. But 3I/Atlas had a second, hidden ledger, its internal energy, that stored chemical fuel. So the mysterious push wasn't new energy coming from nowhere. It was just a transfer from the internal fuel account over to the motion account. Simple as that. And this one idea, this hand warmer theory, it just beautifully solves everything at once. The mysterious push, those are the natural jets powered by the meta-ice. The weird chemistry? Well, the meta-ice itself is made of those exact compounds. And the interstellar origin? It's just a natural object from another solar system that has its own unique geology. It all just clicks into place. No aliens required. So ultimately, the story of 3i/8less isn't really just about a weird rock from another star. It's about us. It's about how we approach the unknown. And it's a fantastic lesson in how science actually works. This whole thing was a textbook case of something called model blindness. One way to think says, hey, my understanding of a comet is perfect, and since this object doesn't fit my perfect model, it must be something totally different, like an alien engine. But the scientific method says something else. It says, this object doesn't fit my simple model, therefore my model is probably too simple. I need to upgrade it to include more complexity, like the comet's internal chemistry and structure. So, in the end, the fundamental laws of the universe were never in any danger. What was broken was our simple, maybe even lazy assumption that all comets are just these inert flying snowballs. This visitor forced us to get smarter, to build a better and frankly a much more interesting model. And this is the real takeaway. The magic of an alien probe was really just a placeholder for a natural process we hadn't figured out yet. Once you add that complexity to the model, the comet's internal engine, the magic just evaporates. And what you're left with is mechanics. The universe, it turns out, is often way more fascinating for its hidden natural complexity than for any aliens we might imagine are hiding out there. So, in the end, 3i/ATLS did open a third eye. But it wasn't some glowing sensor on an alien ship staring back at us. The eye it opened was on us. It was a new perspective for ourselves, a lesson in how we see the universe, how we question our own assumptions, and how we learn to appreciate the intricate, beautiful mechanics of the cosmos.